Welcome to 93.7 The Ticket here on this lovely Saturday evening. With me today, I have my friend and teammate, Cortez Ruiz. Cortez came from the University BYU early on this semester. Cortez has a very amazing story. So, to start things off, what year did you first come to college, Cortez? Was it 2019?
I started college in 2018 in January at BYU.
2018 in January at BYU. So that's when he started college. From there, he had his career. He was a 400, 200 guy coming out of high school. That's where he focused. He was a 2-4 strictly, a great sprinter, was in the 47s. And then halfway through his college career, hopefully I don't get this mixed up, but actually went on a mission trip down to Russia. Is that correct?
So it was before I started BYU. It was after high school. I went on my mission to Russia, and then I got back end of 2017. Then I went to BYU after the mission.
After the mission trip. Okay. So he went to Russia for 4 years, correct? Or two
Two
years?
years.
2 years, mission trip
Yeah.
down to Russia. After that, decided to run track at BYU, did the 2 and the 4. After his 4 years of eligibility was up at BYU, he then decided to take, was it a gap year or a gap semester?
So I graduated BYU. I was planning to graduate in 2022, and then my plans after that was to go to law school.
Hmm.
And I went straight into law school after that, and I had that extra year of eligibility thanks to COVID.
Hmm.
So because of how eligibility works, it's all I couldn't do a gap year. I had to you only get 5 years, six with COVID for me.
Right.
Um, that little window to use your eligibility.
Compete, right? So from that, that little eligibility window, the crazy thing was too, he didn't do any fall training with us from that year, from 2022, 2023, that 2023 fall, he did no training with the team. He did everything on his own while being in law school. And the reason that he didn't do any training with us is because when he came to Nebraska to pursue law school, he did not know if he was going to be able to handle the stress and the pressures of law school and track. But halfway through, he contacted Coach E, asked to be on the team, and Coach E thought it'd be a great idea to get him on. So I believe you came when was like I think it was December, November is when you decided to come with the guys. January.
Yeah, yeah. I was able to start practicing in January, like right after, like towards the end of Christmas break was when I finally got to be with you guys and train with you guys on the team.
Hmm. So very unique story. He speaks 4 languages. He's pursuing law school. He completely switches event group too, from going from the 2 to the 4 and jumping to the 8. That takes a lot of courage and guts to learn a completely new event. And the greatest part of it all, man, he has experience at the age of 26. That was when he was able to compete with us. And he laughs when he says that, but it taught me a lot of knowledge this year about what it does, what it means to mature. He was a great guy to have around the group. This year, he ran a 151 800. He was in the 48s this year for the 4x4 splits. He was a very reliable guy, always gave really good advice when it came to nutrition, running, just being a great person overall. So this is my dear friend here, Cortez Ruiz. So Cortez, the first question I'm going to go ahead and lead off with, how was the mission trip when you came to Russia? Can you go ahead and differentiate what it meant from jumping to the US culture down to Russia, and then to top that all off, why did you decide to take the mission trip down to Russia?
All right, I'll start with the why, I guess. So I'm part of the church. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it's part of our culture is um, when young men graduate high school that they go on a mission, and young women can go as well. It's more of an expectation for men, um, but also a choice for young women. 2 years is the time that you serve. So I just grew up with this culture and this expectation, and I always wanted to. Like I looked forward to this my whole life. Um, and the way that it works is you put in your papers to get ready to go. Meet with your church leaders, make sure that you're spiritually prepared, that you're worthy to go, and you send your papers to the top. The president of the church, the 12 apostles, and then they receive the inspiration where you're meant to go. And I didn't choose where I went, but I was chose to go to Russia, and that was kind of a dream come true because I had Russian friends. I already loved that culture, wanted to learn that language, and so I was really stoked when I got called to Russia. And that was in 2015, and so went to Russia for 2 years, served a mission. You're basically trying to find people who are interested in learning more about God, and our purpose was to help other people come into Christ. So the first 6 months was a lot of just talking to people on the streets, trying to find people who are interested, just supporting people spiritually, supporting the church there. There's church, our churches around the whole world, and just supporting, supporting the members. And we're in companionships of two, so you always have a companion with you, and every once in a while you'll switch around. You'll go to different areas, different companions, and so that was that. That 2 years was 100% dedicated to serving God and living in that a strict lifestyle. There's a lot we couldn't do. It was kind of like being in the army, but except you're doing a mission for God, for your church. And so that was a great experience, because that's really where you mature. Like for 2 years, like the amount of maturity and experience and all that, because of how difficult the challenges that you face, going through a different country, different culture, different language, and then just the work we're involved in is a difficult work, and learning how to live one-on-one with a person. How you always got to be together. You don't get alone time very much, but big growing experience for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And, to be able to do that for 2 years and, make that, to do that right out of high school too. I mean, that is just insane. And then, after that mission trip too, to come and say, you know what, Division I college track and field. I know you were a football player back in the day in high school. So
yeah,
I know, track and football correlated pretty well. Go ahead and talk to us about your experience at BYU.
Yeah. So it was a childhood dream was to compete in D1 sports, in college. I just loved athletics. I loved football and I loved track. I played some basketball too in high school. But I loved football and track the most. And I was equally good at both. I think I loved track a little bit more deep down. And I also didn't want to deal with the politics of football that can happen more, in track. It's kind of hard to lie with you. You get an exact number, everyone gets the same chance to run a race, and the numbers speak for themselves. They don't lie. So that's why I ultimately went with track. And I wasn't recruited out of high school. I was decent. I ran 49 in the 400 in high school. That was my best event. I was also a high jumper, but I decided to stick to the 400. So when I went to BYU, I found the coach and said, "Hey, I'm interested in walking on. What does that process look like? Can I do that?" And he was like, "Yeah, you can do that. Like, you missed tryouts or in the fall, because I came in January, right?
Right.
But you can kind of train on your own. You can compete unattached at track meets, and then kind of go from there." So that first semester at BYU, I was training on my own, and I competed attached at 2 track meets. I ran like a 50.3 in my first one. I was like, okay, not bad for my first one. And then the second one, I ran like a 50.1, and I was like really disappointed. I thought that was just like so bad and should have done better. And I thought that was over with. I went home for the summer, worked a lot, also got married during that summer, but came back for the fall. And I went up to the coach. I found the coach again and was like, "Hey, what can I do? Is there a chance to try it out?" And he said, "Yeah, there's a chance, but you got to do something exceptional." But he gave me the chance. So then I got to train with the team that fall, and a 2-week tryout turned into a 3-month tryout, turned into 6 months of training with the team, because there was no room on the team.
Yeah.
But there was I showed some potential, and I stuck with it. And finally, by March, I made the team, and I got to travel that first week, and that was the 2019 season. So I would run the 400, but I would do the 4x4, sometimes the 200, even sometimes the 4x1. Like on the B team or C team. But that was kind of how I got onto the track team at BYU, and had three full seasons there over 4 years because of COVID and stuff. So that was BYU. At least getting into it.
Right. And, all that was a build up to, for training for the 800. It seems like, when you came over to Nebraska, that was never the plans for you. At least it wasn't at BYU to be a 400-meter runner. I know when you first came that you did talk about, you had some thoughts of becoming an 800-meter runner one day, but at BYU, you never trained for it. You never even ran it. I think you said you did a time trial and ran like 159 one time, 158 by yourself. So I'm like, okay, this guy definitely does have some potential. So go ahead and talk about the transition when you decided to pursue law school why you chose Nebraska, and then how you got onto the team in Nebraska.
Okay. So I chose to go to law school, probably like when I was a sophomore at BYU, second year at BYU, I kind of chose law school would be the next step after I graduate.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know where to go. Like I had no idea. And I ended up applying to like 7 different schools around the United States. And I got into 4 of them. And Nebraska was one of them. And again, I just wasn't sure where, I just wanted to go where I was meant to be. Part of me wanted a new adventure in a new place. But I wasn't sure. And at the end of the day, Nebraska ended up giving us like the best scholarship. I had good scholarships other places, but it's funny, we had almost forgotten about Nebraska. Me and my wife were almost kind of thinking, yeah, probably not Nebraska. But then like the next day we get a call from them saying like, here's your scholarship that we want to offer you. And I was like, okay, maybe God doesn't want us to forget about Nebraska. There might be something there for us. So ever since then, we started looking into it. And the more we looked into it, the more we thought, yeah, I think this is the place. And that's where we decided to go. So I came here last year, fall 2022. My wife had to stay in Utah for that semester to finish dental hygiene school. And so I started law school and I was living here. She was there. And like I said, I had the plan, right? Like I had this extra year of eligibility and I love track. And I wasn't super happy with how it ended at BYU. Didn't do as good as I hoped. Didn't get as far as I wanted to. And so I was like, I have this extra year. Like I got to use it. I love track. And so what I did in the fall was I just decided to train on my own because, like you said in the introduction, law school is a huge commitment and I got to be dedicated to that. But track's a big commitment too. It'd be hard to do both of those at once. So my plan was to focus on school, get law school figured out the first semester, train on my own, and then hopefully join the team, by the time season starts, once I have a handle on law school. So I reached out in October. At first, I made one call. Didn't really get, I was trying to get ahead of the coach, but didn't get to. So I made another call later in October, towards the end of October, and I talked to Joel, who's a recruiter. I told him I was like interested in joining the team and stuff like that. And I asked about running unattached so I could prove myself. I thought, come January, I was going to need to go compete unattached to prove myself that I was good enough. But yeah, he's like, all right, I got your name and stuff and your number, I got your information. And that was end of October. But come November, around Thanksgiving, that's when Coach E sent me an email. Just, hey, you still interested in running track? And I was like, yeah, I've been training. I'm ready to go. And like I went and met with him, and he was like really cool and casual, and just like kind of casually talking about me being on the team as if it was already like gonna happen. And I was like, oh, like just like that, like you want me on the team? He was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. Like I thought I had to come and like prove myself, but
you proved yourself at BYU through Teefers.
yeah, it helps to have the experience. So I had to start a process. So I didn't enter the transfer portal because I had no idea I was supposed to enter a transfer portal. Mm-hmm. So when I was at BYU, so I had to get a waiver. Through NCAA, kind of had to petition them to allow me to compete, even though I didn't do the transfer portal. I didn't enter. I just kind of had to tell them like, look, I didn't know about it, and I wasn't recruited by Nebraska. They weren't coming to me. I was going to them saying like, I want to join the team. So everything was cleared up by end of December so I could start training in January.
Yeah. I remember that first time in January. I think we had an alternate workout from you. You had some 200s and we were watching you. We're like, man, this guy looks pretty good, man. I'm excited to see what he can do. And fast forward to the outdoor season where for at least the 800 meters runners, we had some of the biggest competition was the Drake relays, the 4x8, where me, you, Sam, Nick, we all came together for that 4x8 competition. And it all worked out, man. I closed out with the 149, Sam with the 150, and you and Nick with 151s. And now you're the Drake Relay champion. And on top of that, you're also a Big Ten champion. Closing out your final season, being a Big Ten champion, running a 151, which for you, I mean, for all the 800 meters runners out there to, never run the 800 and run a 151 your first ever time competing. I mean, it's amazing. And that just shows what type of athlete you are, what type of determination you have for the sport. And on top of that, being married, I forgot to mention, you're married and expecting a daughter this upcoming year later in, I think,
yeah, end of October.
October. Yep. And so being a Big Ten champion on top of that, going to law school, being married, all these different factors going into it. Can you talk about what it meant to close out your season with being a Big Ten champion and getting a ring on your way out?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty special. Like you mentioned, all these things that I do. I'm kind of I just love. I try to live life to the fullest.
Four languages, by the way. Four languages.
Well, three. I'm
Three
working on others.
Working on the fourth.
But you could say three, fluent in three. But yeah, like track is my passion. I always want to pursue it and make the most of it. But I also, family's number one, God's number one. So that's the life I gotta live. I live by those principles. And I think part of the plan for me, law school, I think was God's plan for me. He wants me to do that, to provide for my family, but also to put myself in the position to be who he wants me to be in this world, to make it a better place. So I just try to live to the fullest, let God direct my path, but also enjoy and try to find my strengths. And so it's pretty special. Like I couldn't have just, planned this out myself. I never thought in a million years I would end up in Nebraska. Who would ever think? I've never been to the Midwest. I'm like, Nebraska? Never would have expected I'd be here. But it's pretty cool that I ended up here, made friends with all you guys on the team. And I came at this special year when, Nebraska had been going over some changes recently. New coaches, new teammates, just a lot of changes. And ended up being a really successful year. And so it was really special to be a part of that. And, track is individual, but also a team sport. And so getting to have that team dynamic with Nebraska with such a good season, like it was really cool. There's nothing more special than when you're, doing what you love, running track, but when you're accomplishing things together as a team, and it's that brotherhood, it's those relationships that you cherish the most. And so when you're together with the team and you do something big, like win Big Tens, we crushed it. We almost won winter, but when we were mad that we didn't. So we came back hard in the spring, and that was pretty cool. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, Cortez Ruiz, everybody. It's been an amazing journey watching you from January all the way to the end of May. You as a training partner as well, man. You pushed me every single day in practice too. The days I didn't want to do it, the days I didn't want to do those ab workouts, we always had you to lead them. You were the guy,
Yeah.
even if our teammates didn't like it. Shout out Neve. You always we do abs even when we didn't want to do them. You were always in the weight room early in those mornings too. Nobody else would be there except for you, man. You'd be the only guy in the weight room in the morning because you had your schedule, you had everything set, and
Yeah.
I know you like being mentally tough and disciplined. So, but yeah, Cortez, if you have any closing statements for anybody out there watching this that wants to be a D1 athlete, wants to learn a new language, wants to go to law school, really, if they want to accomplish anything close to what you have done, any words of inspiration or admiration that you would have for anybody out there?
Yeah, I would just say, becoming a D1 athlete in some situation it is hard, but in others, it's a lot more doable than you might think it is. But part of that for me is just goes back to like God's plan. When I'm trusting in that, things work out the way they're meant to be. And so that's my advice is follow what you love, but trust the process and be patient, because at the end of the day, it's not just about what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to accomplish. That drives you. That's the way I am. I set big goals and that drives me. But at the end of the day, I think there's always a bigger purpose at the center of it. At the end of the day, I've become a better person thanks to my journey, because my track journey wasn't perfect. I went through a lot of challenges. But I learned so much, and I made so much good relationships with people like you and many others. And it's just nothing's more special than that. It's like it's the person you become throughout this process. So just remember that at the end of the day, that's what matters most. And so when things might not go the way you hoped, and you might not achieve your dreams in the way that you thought you would, it still will be the best way as long as you're trusting in God, trusting the process, being patient, and just seeing the big picture. Um, so yeah, that's what I can say.
Very well put, my brother. So everybody, Cortez Ruiz. Cortez, thank you so much for being on 93.7 The Ticket. This was Niko at night, and I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Thanks for having me. It's
Of
good.
course, anytime, Cortez. Peace out, guys.